You found your person. Now let the Knot help you with everything else. The Knot connects you to the wedding inspo, vendors, venues, and planning tools you need to make your day totally you. Having helped plan 25 million weddings, we've got your back when it comes to every little detail like RSVPs, budgets, and more. Because your wedding comes to life with the connections that matter the most. Get started at theknot.com/audio. The Knot. Let's plan your wedding together.
Every Pokemon Episode Ever podcast is now on YouTube. Go on YouTube and search Every Pokemon Episode Ever podcast and click that subscribe button to never miss an episode. Welcome back, everybody, to another fantastic episode of the Every Pokemon Episode Ever podcast. I am one of your hosts today, good old Wrestling Chris G. And on the other line with me today is my usual co-host, the one that tries to not steal from you, even though he does. It's good old Dougie Fresh. Dougie, man, how you doing?
I resent that accusation.
I kind of had to pick something that went with this episode because Farfetch'd kind of steals. I couldn't really think of anything, even though you kind of steal some history moments from me from time to time. But
never.
But also, as we noted last week on the podcast, we do have a special guest this week. It is YouTube sensation Blaines. Blaines, how are you doing today, man?
How's it going? I've been doing well. Glad to be here, I guess. This is going to be very interesting.
Absolutely. Thank you again for joining us. So yeah, Blaines, as we stated last week, you are a YouTube sensation. You cover a lot of Pokemon and a few other different types of video games that you do on your YouTube channel. But would you want to let our audience kind of know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so obviously I've hit it big, got really lucky with Pokemon about a year and a half ago, and my content kind of revolves around exploits, mostly from Pokemon Sword and Shield, since this is the game that I've been focusing on since a year and a half ago. So we got exploits, got news for Pokemon events and related stuff, and giveaways. That seems to be the big three for my channel right now. And it's still going pretty okay, so I'm pretty comfortable here. I'm looking forward to whatever other Pokemon stuff comes our way. I'm really keeping my eye on Pokemon Unite, actually. I know a lot of people haven't really been, or they didn't really like the reception when they first saw Pokemon Unite, but I think it's going to be big, you know? I think it is going to be pretty big.
Okay, all right. And I'm kind of curious. So I've kind of snooped on your YouTube page as of recent. I'm trying not to look too much because I don't want any spoilers because I'm currently playing the Pokemon Snap game with my son. But how did you like that game so far?
I'm really enjoying it, actually. It's addictive, mostly because of the leaderboards. I've done all the levels over and over again to try and maximize my score so I can hit it up in the top of the top 10 in the world and such. And I've gotten the top 10 for some of the courses, actually, but I'm still going.
Oh, really?
But yeah, it's very enjoyable. It's really enjoyable, yeah. I haven't actually done videos on it. I did a stream only.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no videos.
Gotcha. Okay.
I don't know why, but content for this doesn't seem to be super popular, actually.
I know. I've been looking. I mean, yeah, I see some walkthroughs. I see people have already, well, they say that they've kind of 100%ed the game for what it is for right now, but I don't think that that's kind of possible at this point. The game just came out, but I haven't dug too deep into those videos because I don't want any spoilers on my own. Doug, are you familiar with Pokemon Snap?
I'm familiar with the original. I played the original quite a bit at some friends' houses, and you have recently been talking about the new game that, as we're recording this, just came out, but as people are hearing it, has been out for about a month now, give or take. So by the time people are hearing this, it's possible that people have 100%ed it.
Yes, that is. So, all right. Well, thank you, Blaines, for introducing yourself. As you know from listening to this podcast, we like to go back in history on this date. Now, it's funny because, Blaines, you live in Japan, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Been here for about a year, about nearly 3 years.
3 years. Okay. So I do have a few questions in regards to that too. But so we give both the Japanese and the American release dates, but we normally go with the American release date and give a history moment. But it's just funny because you're the first person that we've had on the podcast that's actually from Japan. So this episode was released on June 18th, 1998 in Japan. And here in the States, it was released March 20th, 1999. And on this day, my date this week, Doug, is from 2012. And I believe yours is from 94, right?
Correct.
Okay, so yes, you are going first this week. You kind of snagged one under me, just like I alluded to at the beginning of the podcast. So,
I don't know what you're talking about.
So what is your historical date from 94, Doug?
So on this date in 94, March 20th, as you alluded to, WWE holds WrestleMania 10, emanating from Madison Square Garden in New York City.
You're fine, Doug.
We got a fourth visitor.
Yes.
Perfectly fine. Every other recording session. Anyway.
All right. So you said March 20th, 1994, from Madison Square Garden.
So yeah, this is a notable WrestleMania for quite a few reasons. This is obviously Bret Hart's crowning moment, defeating Yokozuna in the main event for the WWE Championship, WWF at the time, I suppose. But he also lost the opener of the evening to his brother Owen Hart in what is widely considered one of the best WrestleMania opening matches in history.
Oh, wow.
And this was actually Yokozuna's second title defense, because earlier in the evening he lost. He won via disqualification, successfully defending his championship against Lex Luger, because at that previous year's Royal Rumble event, Bret Hart and Lex Luger simultaneously eliminated each other, and rather than have a singles match on television, because we're still in the era of 4 pay-per-views in a calendar year, they just decided to hold a coin flip, and the winner of the coin flip, which is weird looking back at it in hindsight, the winner of the coin flip would face Yokozuna first, which, taking a step back at it and looking at it in 2021 eyes, kind of puts the guy going second at an advantage, because he's not facing the fresh man.
Yes.
So if you go back and you look at the clip of the coin toss on Raw, Lex Luger wins the coin toss, meaning that he'll go first, and he celebrates. He should be mad. So, and this was also the famous, pardon me. Where is it? The famous ladder match between Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels.
Oh, that was on this show too. I forgot about that match.
Yeah, this card was actually stacked, and if you look at it, there's one dark match, but outside of that, there's only 8 matches on this card.
Which is crazy to say now, because now I feel like we have like 25 and then 2 like pre-show matches. So
yeah, I mean, now it's gotten to the point where it has to be 2 nights. So.
Been a long time since I saw WrestleMania. I mean, I remember watching that stuff when I was a kid, and I was young enough that I thought pay-per-view actually meant pay-per-view, and I not know what they meant by that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right. Well, thank you, Doug, for your history moment. Mine kind of takes a turn in almost a complete opposite direction, but mine was from 2012 when the movie John Carter was released on this day, but I'm not talking about it to kind of celebrate the movie. I'm talking about it because it actually made news headlines that it actually lost $200 million when it was released. So it made, it had a lot of hype going into it, but nobody was really interested in actually going to watch this movie. And it's funny because I was actually working at AMC back in 2012, and it was a ghost town. I was surprised at how little like people were like just like not interested in watching this movie. I worked the box office. I did the theater cleans. I mean, I was kind of appreciative that I didn't have to clean that theater as much, but yeah, that movie lost $200 million. One of the largest, actually it says it's one of the records for the largest losses in cinema history for this movie. So that's just huge.
Oh, well, that is a movie I haven't seen myself, so I'm starting to not be too surprised.
So, all right. So that's our history moment. And if you don't mind, Blaines, if I can just ask you real quick. So you live in Japan. So right before we get into this episode, what made you transition to Japan and the Japan lifestyle? What made you want to go all the way out there?
I was living in Ireland. I'd finished up my master's in college, and I spent about a year looking for a job that I actually really wanted. So I was being a little picky, but doing applications for jobs at that level is just absurd. It's one application a day at best, and it's practically a non-paid job trying to do those. And I experienced a lot of no replies, so I just gave up actually and took a summer off. That summer was when Pokemon Go came out, and I played a lot of that and actually got into the news, got on TV. And I was all that experience actually with Pokemon Go there convinced me to start YouTube. So I did start YouTube about 4 years ago, around that time, and tried to make that my job. I started off with Zelda, or at least that was my first big success, Zelda Breath of the Wild. And it went down. It went down after about a couple of months, half a year or so, because I was doing live streams. And I thought then, well, now I'm free to do anything. I'm going to go to Japan because I don't have anything tying me down here. So I did. I went to Japan. I thought it'd be a good overlap with content creation and a new adventure for me. And here I am, been here for about nearly 3 years now, so things are going well.
All right, well, cool. I just figured I would ask you real quick, because I not many people just up and go off to a different country just out of nowhere, and I never knew the backstory, so I was actually kind of interested to know about the transition. So thank you, Blaines. All right, so we're about to start this episode of Pokemon. So here we go. I'm going to hit the play button on my end, and we start off inside of the forest like we do any other Pokemon episode. It seems like every other week the episode is starting from inside of the forest, and it's kind of odd because when we're starting this episode, Ash is looking in his Pokedex right away, and I guess him and Brock were having some off-screen conversations about Farfetch'd, which I think is kind of odd once we get into the gist of this episode. But Ash is asking Brock, he's like, is it this Pokemon? And he's like, yeah, it's called Farfetch'd. And he's like, wow. And then Misty just runs over and she's like, what are you guys talking about? And Brock is basically telling Ash and Misty there's a Farfetch'd that's been rumored to have been spotted over here, and it's a rare Pokemon. So, Doug, like when you initially watched this, they're plunging right into the episode. What was your thoughts about them going like straight into it? Because he's also holding the egg, which we know is going to end up being Togepi. She actually makes her debut next week. So he's rubbing down the egg, and then they're talking about Farfetch'd. What were your thoughts right when this was first starting up?
So yeah, this was a bit odd, obviously, because I think this is one of the first times that the show has kind of trusted the audience to just kind of be thrown like right into Pokemon lore. Usually we have to see the Pokemon first before like Dexter can make an appearance, but like we're stumbling upon them, and they're actually like doing like field research, basically. Like Ash is like asking Brock if it's this one, and then like you said, Misty comes running up saying she's found one, and then we're just led to believe that it's ultra rare. And at that point we get Dexter, who in this case is not only appreciated but actually needed.
Yes. He talks about the little leak that Farfetch holds. He says Farfetch prepares very, very good meals, but also kind of alludes to the fact that people like to eat Farfetch because they're very tasty. That's kind of what I got out of it, because Dexter also said that because of this reason, Farfetch'd are pretty rare and they're becoming extinct.
Right.
Pretty dark.
Yeah, that's very, very dark. What did you think when you heard that, Blaines, when you were watching this?
Yeah, as an adult, of course, that's something that stands out now that I associate Pokemon with being a much more kid-oriented show and game. But I remember it being something like that back in the original Blue and Red when I played it on Game Boy, or at least so I hear from, vague memories going all the way back then. And that, as a kid, that's not something that seems unusual, at least from my memory, As a kid, I don't think that stood out at the time.
I don't think
but
so
looking
either.
back now, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Obviously, that's not the only Pokemon that we do see being eaten, especially in the first series. So obviously, and of course, even in the latest game, eating Pokemon or food-oriented Pokemon in Generation 8 is obviously very oriented towards eating. And I don't know where they're going with this. It's sort of a Japanese thing, I think, very much a Japanese style where they do not have some boundaries. They do want to orient some things for kids, but then again, some boundaries just aren't there, and they end up doing something that turns out to be rather dark for us from the West, from a Western perspective.
Absolutely. And I just think it's weird because you can eat a Farfetch, but when it came earlier this season, we were covering Magikarp on a few episodes, and we found out Magikarp is basically impossible to eat because its shells and its fin and everything is basically like gold. Like you bite into it, like nothing can break into this Pokemon. But it also, like me and Doug like to say, it's a kid's show, so it's not always going to make sense. Like, how can you attack a Magikarp and beat it and it can faint, but you try to bite this Magikarp and your teeth falls out? There's a weird parallel when it comes to that. But yeah, they talk about eating the Farfetch, and then Ash is like, he gets his mojo going, and he's like, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to go and find this Pokemon, and I'm going to capture it because it's rare, and I'm going to get one of these Pokemon. So, of course, once that happens, Brock is like, okay, well, before we do that, we need to get some supplies. Ash, why don't you come with me? Come get some water with me. Come get some supplies with me, and we'll come back, and then we'll come and start looking for the Farfetch once we get back. So they start running off. And of course, with this only being a 20-minute cartoon, as soon as they walk away, what ends up happening, Doug, in this next scene?
I'm trying to let my video catch up.
Well, okay, I will. So, you got it.
So Psyduck is out because he's kind of got Pikachu syndrome, where doesn't like his Pokeball. So Misty is in the process of picking up her bag to get Psyduck back, and then she starts hearing the call of this Farfetch'd that Brock and Ash just went in the opposite direction looking for, and then we see it just regally marching down the road, carrying its little leek staff and singing its little song, and then we get the title sequence.
Yes. And so after the title sequence happens, I mean, you see Farfetch'd just walking around, just parading around, and it seems very trained. So I mean, of course, I mean we've stated Misty is a 10-year-old, Ash is a 10-year-old, and Brock is somewhere in his teens. But seeing this Farfetch'd seems very confident. It's running around, it's doing tricks. And Misty's like, "Oh man, it's a Farfetch'd. They were just talking about this Farfetch'd. Oh, I want one." So she goes over and she wants to go and capture this Farfetch'd. Doug?
So Farfetch'd goes running in the opposite direction, and Misty runs after it and finds it hiding behind a rock, and the chase resumes, and Misty's like, "I don't want to hurt you." Obviously she just wants to capture it, and Farfetch'd is just booking it, and Misty's, to her credit, keeping up with him, and Misty is in the process of saying, "You won't get away from me," and then she just runs smack into this dude.
Yes. So as of right now, we don't have a name of this dude as of yet, so we won't give him the name yet. But at this point, he's introduced. This is obviously the trainer of Farfetch'd, but he doesn't say that yet. He bumps into Misty. Misty's bag goes flying onto the floor. That's a key point in this part of the scene. So her bag goes flying onto the ground, and Misty's all apologetic. He's very apologetic. And she states that she was chasing a Pokemon, and come to find out that this Pokemon is his. Well, not yet. He runs away. He says, "Okay, here's your bag. Sorry that I ran into you." Hands her bag back, or so we think, and then just goes darting down. Now, Blaines, when she bumps into this dude, he was obviously going in the opposite direction that Misty was going. So after he bumped into her, they fall, he hands her the bag, and then starts running in the opposite direction as to when he was running before. Odd, or what did you think when you were watching this part of the episode? This is a very weird episode.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, you have to allow for the cartoonish aspect of it. So at first, or when I'm watching it, that's not something I kind of consider too closely. Now, of course, it should be, because it turns out, maybe there's something to it, rather than him just being a stand-up gentleman, picking up her bag for her and disappearing off into the woods again. But that part where he ran the opposite direction that he was running in the first place wasn't something that stood out to me originally. But now that you mention it, definitely something that I'll pay attention to next time if I do get a chance.
All right. And yeah, so he hands Misty back the bag, and she starts kicking the ground. She starts going back to camp, and then that's where she sees Ash and Brock and Pikachu, and they're like, "Well, Misty, where'd you go?" And she's like, "Oh, I found a Farfetch'd and I tried to capture it, but it got away." And of course, with Brock and Ash hearing this, they get pissed. They're like, "Wait, you went behind our back? We're the ones that told you about this Pokemon, so you went to go and try to capture it on your own. Where did it go? What direction did it go?" Doug, you want to go over this part?
So, yeah, they basically read Misty the riot act, and then, because heaven forbid she tries to be a trainer for once, and then, Brock is like, well, here anyway, I got you the water you wanted. And then, that's when Misty gets the first look into what she assumes is her bag. And then this is where we find out that something is obviously, is obviously amiss.
Yeah,
because
the bag is full of rocks.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when I was watching this, I was watching this, and obviously, so as I stated to you, Blaines, like we try to look at this as adults, but that we do remember it is a kid's show. Like, first thing that comes to my mind when I'm watching this, and we figure out that there was a whole switcheroo that just happened. How did he know what type of bag Misty was carrying? How did he get this exact same bag? How long has he been doing this? Is this just a popular bag that most trainers have? Like, I'm like, what? So he was able to bump into her, grab the bag, throw it off into wherever he threw it to, and drop what is a bag full of rocks. Like, that was a very weird, like, switcheroo that had happened.
Yeah, I think plot twist. I think there's a plot twist.
Extremely convenient. No, I'm sorry. It's what you call extremely convenient.
Yeah, it's just like I like Pokemon, but I do like Pokemon when they kind of put a little bit of thought into their episode. I mean, obviously it's a 20-minute episode. It's just, like I said, watching this as an adult, I'm just like, how did that even happen? How was he able to do all of that? Or, I mean, I guess he's a master of his craft. And this is when we find out. So the Pokemon trainer's name is Keith. Keith is his name. That's his Farfetch'd. And in this next scene, he's seen walking with Misty's backpack, and he's throwing it up and down in the air, and he's with Farfetch'd, and Farfetch'd is just happy, and he's looking inside. He's like, oh, there's 5 Pokeballs inside of here, and this must be all of her Pokemon. And then they just keep walking. He's like, well, they're all mine now. And during this time, Misty was telling the story to Brock and Ash, and Brock is basically like, well, that must have been when the backpacks got switched. So you probably ran into them. Both of your backpacks fell on the ground, and you guys just grabbed the wrong backpack. All right, no problem. We can go over to see Officer Jenny, and hopefully we can get in contact with the person so we can get the backpacks switched back. And Misty is just throwing a fit like a little 10-year-old that she is. Doug?
I don't think you're being fair. I mean, she basically got robbed. And I think she's well within her rights to be a little upset here.
But she doesn't know that she was robbed yet.
What do you mean she doesn't know? She's got a bag of rocks.
Well, did you not hear Brock and Ash? They're like, well, it's just probably convenient. You ran into them. Both of your bags fell onto the ground. And when they fell onto the ground, you guys just grabbed the wrong bags. I mean, they're looking at it like teenagers and little children.
Well, right. I mean, we have the hindsight of looking at it, with a little bit more clarity. I mean, we see a bag of but even it is a little.
Honestly, I think it's just a rock collector. I mean, there are a lot of those.
that just happened to be wrapped in tin. That just happened to be wrapped in tinfoil.
Yes. Just so they can weigh more.
Protection.
So from there, but yeah, Doug, you were about to go over the next part in the scene, but you said I'm not giving it any justice. She was robbed. She was robbed. I mean, and we can pick up the impression that he's done this before. Because we go back and we see that he's got like this little tent hideout, and he's just got piles of Pokeballs, and he's flipping one of the Pokeballs up in the air like a baseball, and he said, this is too easy. And this is when Farfetch'd comes running, kind of like a Lassie in the well situation. And And there's
this
Team
is
Rocket.
when, 6 minutes into the episode, we get our first glimpse of Team Rocket. Not as quick as previous episodes, but also not as long either.
No. But for once, and I feel quite a while now, Team Rocket actually plays a decent part in this episode. Like they're in it from the beginning, basically all the way to the end. Actually, they are in it all the way until the end.
Right.
So at this moment, Team Rocket's also heard of Farfetch'd as well. So my thing is, okay, everybody has heard about this Farfetch'd, but is nobody putting two and two together as to why they're hearing about this Farfetch'd? Or is it just Farfetch'd is a rare Pokemon that's over inside of this forest and people are wanting to capture it? Like, where are they hearing the news? Because there's nobody telling anybody that Farfetch'd is in this forest, and the reason he's in this forest is because he's stealing Pokemon.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up Officer Jenny earlier, and when Brock and Nash were trying to help Misty and kind of apply some logic to this situation. Oh, we'll get a hold of Officer Jenny and we'll get this sorted. Yeah, there should be posters. Yes. I mean, this should be like a Bugs Bunny, rabbit season, duck season situation. There should be like wanted posters on trees, wanted for theft, and it's a picture of this dude in Farfetch'd.
I mean, they did that for Team Rocket in episode 1 or 2 that we went over.
2, I believe.
And you were mentioning the question about whether or not he's been doing this for a long time, and actually, I think from this setup and something we see a little later as well, it kind of looks like maybe he hasn't been doing it. Maybe this is his first round.
You think so?
You'll see later.
Yeah, I was a little confused because the way he's got the bag of rocks that are perceivably weighted as Pokeballs, hence the aluminum foil wrapping, like a demented Reese's cup. You'd think, oh, this is a guy that's, this is trial and error. He's finally perfected the weight. But yeah, there was this instance where it's like, oh, so at a certain point, like you said earlier, Chris, you just kind of have to throw your hands up and go, it is a kid's show.
Yes. But from that, we end up going into the next part of the episode. So Team Rocket, as I stated, they hear about this Farfetch'd and they're talking about this Farfetch'd, and who just happens to jump out of the bushes right at the moment that they're talking about Farfetch'd is Farfetch'd. And he's walking down the trail, and Meowth is like, whoa, is that Farfetch'd? And then Farfetch'd is just walking down. He's doing his nice little tricks. He does the good old peace sign that is very popular in Pokemon back in the 90s. And he's just walking down, and Jesse's like, man, what amazing luck. We've come to look for it, and it's come to look for us. And yeah, actually, James, this is kind of weird because Jesse wants the Pokemon, but James goes straight into, that looks like a tasty duck. Like he wants to eat this Farfetch'd, and
he's still bitter about Magikarp.
Yeah,
he also wanted to eat Magikarp in other episodes too, and having these dreams about that.
So they just like to. I mean, I would hate to see what they do to Pokemon off screen. So I'm just gonna save that for a different podcast. What they do to a Caterpie when they're hungry in the middle of the woods, but but yeah, Meowth jumps up and it's like, it looks so happy to see us. This Farfetch'd is mine. So he jumps up and is just going straight on in. Doug, I'll let you do the rest of this part of the scene.
So Team Rocket is under the assumption that they're just going to be able to grab this Farfetch'd, but it's at pretty much that exact moment that Keith walks up and says, "It seems like you guys like my Farfetch'd." And then they have this moment where their collective hearts drop out of their stomachs. It's like, oh, it already has a master. But then Keith proposes a deal. Because he says, I'll trade you my Farfetch'd because I've got my hands full. I've got Star Me and Star You at a time. And hold on, my video got a little ahead of me. I was doing so good.
No, you're good. I'll get this part. So he says, "Yeah, I'm looking for someone to kind of train my Farfetch'd. I have all these other Pokemon, but you know what? I'm deciding to kind of give up being a Pokemon trainer. So why don't I just give these to you, and then I'll just go about my day." So right there, so Blaines, that red flag right there. So Team Rocket are thieves, and they're sitting here. They found a trainer who's willing to give up all of his Pokemon, including his Farfetch'd, which is what they were looking for. That just shows how dim-witted Team Rocket is and how they would just fall for anything.
Yeah, I mean, Team Rocket are kind of cute in a way when you look at them. They're ditzy, innocent style. They just happen to be in the wrong line of work, But they look like they're just kind of going off on their life, trying to make it, just like anybody else in a way. But they just happen to be associated with a criminal gang. But yeah, no, they're not very bright about picking up their own trade when they see it. But you'll notice Keith was actually carrying one of those that blue bag, right?
Yes.
If you remember back at the tent, one of 5 bags in the tent, including the one he swapped with Misty. So it looks like he was fairly prepared as well when you think about it. So yeah, what's Team Rocket going to do? Well, they have to keep learning their lesson the hard way, as always, as you expect.
So at this moment, of course, Keith walked them over to a convenient boat that is right next to a dock, and Team Rocket is like, "Ooh, we can take all these Pokemon and just get out of here." Because Keith went back to go and supposedly grab some more Pokemon because he doesn't want to he basically doesn't want to be a trainer anymore, is what is the line that he's giving Team Rocket. So Jesse, James, and Meowth are like, "Okay, well, let's just take Farfetch'd. Let's take this bag. And, oh, there's a boat right here, too. Okay, let's go ahead and get in this boat. And this is the easiest snab that we're going to have." Doug?
Yeah, I mean, in their eyes, Keith basically served all this up to them on a silver platter. And, Keith just takes off running, like you said, to go get more. And then Meowth is like, "Well, this is easier than taking candy from a baby." Or Jesse is, rather.
Yes.
And then
they use that line quite a bit in this episode. We missed it the first time, but when when Keith grabbed the Pokemon from Misty, he's like, "It's like taking candy from a baby." That's the line of the episode in this one.
Oh, that's a fair point. I didn't catch it the first time.
So, but yeah, you can continue. So they got in the boat, Doug?
So yeah, so they just take off sprinting towards this boat, with the bag and with Farfetch'd, and they're just happier than a pig in mess. And what could go wrong? We've already accomplished our goal. We've only 8.5 minutes into the episode. We've perfected our winning formula, and then the boat springs a mysterious leak.
And it's funny because as soon as it springs up, Farfetch'd just looks up and just looks at the water just springing up, and then looks over at Team Rocket and then just jumps into the water. He's like, all right.
Because you see, he's a duck.
Yes. So at this point, Jesse and James Pokemon, Lickitung, Arbok, and Weezing are floating away in the water, and Jesse's like, "All right, let's go ahead and use the Star Me and Star You that's inside of this bag." So she goes in there to go and call out these Pokemon to help save them. And of course, it's another bag filled with rocks, but he got a little ballsy in this one. He had a little drawing of like a little kid like pulling down his eye and sticking out his tongue like na 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 na, and just Jesse and James were like, "What the hell?" Blaines, all right, when you were watching this, please tell me this part made you laugh.
Yeah, of course. I mean, clearly Keith is enjoying what he does. So I know I was saying earlier that it looks like, as of yet, that maybe this is his first time, and that's just kind of because of something we'll see later. But obviously, everything else in the episode looks like he's the mastermind. Okay, he's going to be the future Giovanni. He's going to be ahead of Team Rocket. Jesse and James are going to end up working for him at one point. But clearly, Jesse and James are always the underdog, and you can't help but feel bad for them a little bit, especially when they get caught out by like someone who's probably a kid or very young, and in such a ludicrous manner, you know?
Yes.
First, they're on the Titanic. They get sunk. They lose their Pokemon as clockwork, right? And the note is just rubbing salt in the wound, right? But it is funny. It's a classic, actually, that the pulling your eye down, tongue out thing is a typical kind of Japanese thing kids like to do.
Yes.
It's pretty common, yeah. So obviously there's a lot of things that are quite Japanese culture here, which are still quite popular, became popular in the West just from watching Pokemon, you know, when it became so popular.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Blaines, you actually took the question right out of my mouth. I was going to ask you if you were a little bit more familiar with that taunt, because obviously we've seen it a handful of times already in the show, and it's going to continue popping up.
Japanese people do actually do that in real life, as well as the peace pose. It's a popular one for photos and whatever, or at least it used to be. Obviously, things change, but yeah, I have seen people here in Japan doing that pulling your eye down, tongue out thing.
Wait, hold up. Sorry, Doug. Wait, so it's not just an anime thing? Like, people actually do that in real life? Like, out there, they'll, as like a sly, or maybe doing it with their friends, they'll do the whole eye pull and tongue out thing out in Japan?
Yeah. It's mostly kind of a childish thing, but adults do it. My wife has done it to me, and I don't know which came first. Did they have it as like a thing that they did first, or what, did they see it in anime and start doing it? You know, which came first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know.
The chicken or the egg? Oh, you took the words right out of my mouth. So, that's actually pretty fascinating. So, I'm planning on going to like Japan. Like I've talked my wife into wanting to go there because that's one of the places I want to visit in my lifetime. And once the whole pandemic and everything is over, we were actually supposed to go. This month, we had made plans last year to go in May of this year to go to Japan. But with the whole pandemic happening, it kind of put things back. But hopefully next year around May or June, we'll be able to get out there and just see the culture for a few weeks. And I've heard it's very different, and it's something you got to do if you're interested in the culture.
Yeah, I think visiting is great. You know, you'll be able to see a lot of things, feel a lot of things. There's that very fresh Japanese feel that just stands out, that, you know, it's just, this is a different planet. It's a different world, not what I'm used to. Living here, of course, you get used to things, and there's a few downsides to living here. It gets very pricey to live here, like paying the government many things and all that. So obviously visiting is easygoing. It's good time, man.
All right. So back to the anime. We're at the scene now. Jesse just found the bag full of rocks, and here comes Farfetch'd just swimming in the water. And with its leak, it's picking up wheezing, coughing. Wheezing, Arbok, and Lickitung, and putting it into its nice little convenient backpack that it's now wearing, and just going away. And Jesse and James are just pissed. James is like, "Hey, that's my Pokemon, and those are my Pokemon," Jesse is saying. They're just sitting there yelling, and freaking Farfetch'd runs over to Meowth and just takes its leak and just starts pounding it away at Meowth's head. I felt bad for Meowth. That like, what did Meowth do besides just sit on top of the boat, get hit in the head, make the boat sink into the water, and then they all just go capsize and just fall off into a waterfall? Doug?
Yeah, I mean, he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like you said, he got drubbed with the leak. Team Rocket went over the falls. Presumably to their death. I mean, we don't. I mean, at this particular time, we don't know. And then Farfetch'd gets back on shore with Keith and just kind of living high on the hog at this moment. And then I presume this is where the act break comes in.
Yes.
And then we return back.
Pokemon this week, Doug.
And I sure as hell hope. As hell hope it's Farfetch'd.
Yes, it was.
It's a ditto. It's a ditto disguised as Farfetch'd.
They honestly could do that for every episode. So we return back with our heroes at the police station, and we can see that Misty is towards the end of telling the story.
Yes, and it's at this point that she was telling Officer Jenny, yeah, it did a little dance, and I just want to get back in touch with this trainer so we can get our bags switched back. And Officer Jenny kind of puts her head down, and she goes, so the Farfetch'd came, did a trick, you went running after it, you bumped into a kid, and then you now have a bag full of rocks. Well, you are the 5th trainer this week who has the exact same story, so this was not a coincidence. You were robbed. And this is when the trio just gets all sorts of pissed off. I mean, and obviously Misty more than Ash and Brock. But this is where we finally get the beware of this Pokemon sign. Why is this sign not everywhere in this forest? But we
absolutely.
But no, it's sitting right next to Officer Jenny's like little office / hut or whatever you want to call it. Like, okay, it's here, but it's not where it should be in the forest where they're doing all of these acts. But wow.
Obviously far more eco-friendly and way ahead of the times back then in the 90s.
Apparently so. So Officer Jenny, and I want to point out, because we don't get Officer Jenny too much in these episodes, and the symbol that's on her hat. So Blaines, I'm not sure if you are familiar with this, but we noticed that with the Nurse Joys and Officer Jenny's, that there's actually a way to tell each one of the Jenny's and Joys apart, which is how I guess Brock ends up doing it, that we didn't really notice when we were kids. So Officer Jenny's symbol on the top of her hat is different in each town, and so is Nurse Joy's. Now, as the Pokemon franchise goes through its seasons, Officer Jenny ends up getting a badge that's on her arm that ends up changing in every single city and town that they're in. But Nurse Joy, her cross on her hat is just a different color. So that
is something I never noticed. So yes. That's news to me. Very interesting. I'm going to be looking at that. I'm not going to be able to not see that now from now on.
Absolutely. Now it's just now you're not even going to think about it.
Yes. So, cause I started it with Doug, and Doug, every time he sees a Nurse Joy, he's like, oh, and the hat and the symbol this week is this color and it's this color. But this week, Officer Jenny has a weird, I would kind of say that this is like a seashell type symbol on the top of her hat. Would I be justified in saying that, Doug, this week?
Well, let me backtrack a little bit here. I would say so. I mean, it would kind of fit with the aquatic nature of this episode so far.
Yeah. So that's her symbol this week. It's kind of a weird one. We'll never come back to this town in Pokemon Future anyway. So from here, we go straight back into the forest where Keith and Farfetch'd are again, and they're kind of having a heart-to-heart moment. And he said, this has been a long journey. And he's like, we've come so far ever since I found you injured on the road and nursed you back to health. we've been stealing Pokemon ever since. And they're kind of reminiscing back into, I guess, the good old days as Keith is thinking about. But he's starting to worry now as to how are they going to end up surviving, and that they can't keep doing this because Farfetch'd is too weak to battle. So, Doug, I'm going to ask both of you, but I'm going to start with Doug. When you heard this, Doug, about Farfetch'd being too weak to battle, what was the first thing that came across in your head? And then I'm going to also direct that question over to you, Blaines, in just a second. So, Doug?
Well, obviously, Keith has nobody to blame but himself in this scenario. Like, I understand that he found Farfetch'd on the side of the road injured, and he nursed him back. But if you want to be, and I don't know if he had the mindset of I'm going to be a thief, from the jump, or if it's just something that he kind of fell into and then got good at it or whatever. But it's the trainer's responsibility to train the Pokemon. Ash obviously literally saved Charmander's life. Got Squirtle back on the straight and narrow.
And basically just stole Bulbasaur from the nursery.
well, no.
I'm joking.
The lady at the nursery basically said Bulbasaur is not going to grow anymore staying in here. He needs to go out and explore the world. So yeah, but Ash, and I mean, yeah, we've talked on numerous occasions about how Ash is basically using his Pokemon like Swiss Army knives. Making bridges out of Bulbasaur's Vine Whip and using Charmander as a daggum flashlight. But he's out there having his Pokemon experience the real world.
Yes.
Whereas this Keith fellow is basically treating his Farfetch'd like Robin Hood.
Yes. And Blaines. So, all right. So in this scene, the reason I wanted to direct this over to you twice, because I wanted to kind of add to yours. So Keith kind of looks like a teenager in the scene. Like he looks like he's of the age of possibly Brock, maybe like 13, 14, maybe 15. But I don't want to say that he's 15. I would say more like 13 or 14 years old. What 13 or 14 years old kid doesn't know about training your Pokemon to get your Pokemon to become better?
Okay, so my whole impression from this, now that we're talking about it, and just kind of something you can pick up from the episode, is my impression is Keith is not actually a Pokemon trainer. He found this Farfetch'd injured and whatever, and created a bond by taking care of it properly. So here, obviously, he cares about things, or possibly people. Maybe he cared the Pokemon back to health, but I don't think he has a Pokeball for it. He doesn't battle it. He's not here to be a trainer. And as we see with other people like Ash, for example, at the beginning of the whole thing, he's, his, I suppose, self-proclaimed destiny is to become a trainer. He's set up to do it. And obviously not everybody in the Pokemon universe does become a trainer. So people do encounter Pokemon in other ways. They encounter them naturally and maybe become friends rather than, trainer and trainee is supposed to say. So that's my impression with Keith. I don't think he's actually a Pokemon trainer.
And and I'm glad you said that, because now that I'm thinking about this right now, he never did whip out a Pokeball during this episode to call his Farfetch'd back. So realistically, Misty could have captured this Farfetch'd and it could have been hers. So
yeah.
So this is literally a wild Farfetch'd for the most part. I mean, even though, Keith claims it, but who's to stop anybody else? He needs to get that Pokemon into a Pokeball so it gets registered, so it can't get captured by anybody else. So, all right, yeah, good point out, Blaines.
But see, I think there would in lie the problem, you see, because if you register that Farfetch'd, you're kind of turning it and yourself in, because now you can be tracked. So with this little handshake kind of under the table agreement that they've been in since, Keith found him on the side of the road, you can't be a part of the system because that way you wouldn't be able to pull this off.
Yeah, but I don't think Keith thought that far into it. Or maybe he has, but I wouldn't put it past him. But still, I don't think Keith thought that far into it. I fully think that he thinks Farfetch'd is his legit Pokemon.
I do too. I think there's a kind of a social contract that they've kind of entered into. I got you back on your feet. You and me are partners.
Yes.
You might not be my Pokemon per se, but you and I are partners.
So we go straight from that to inside of the tent. Good old Farfetch'd, who doesn't like to be inside of his Pokeball, gets out of its Pokeball, looking around. He's all sorts of confused, and then just walks out of the tent. And he sees Misty's backpack and just walks out and just walks away. And then this is where we get another glimpse of Team Rocket. Team Rocket is now in their balloon, and they're looking for Keith, who they are considering as the crook, because they want to get their Pokemon back. And Jesse blames James for the loss of their Pokemon because of James' stupidity, and literally side punches James out of the balloon where James is only hanging on by one arm, basically screaming for help to get back into the balloon. Doug?
Not had a good day, his old James. He just survived a fall from the falls, and now he's Mission Impossibling over a freaking balloon basket.
So, but let's see. And then we go to the next part where Misty brings everyone back to the crime scene where she bumped into Keith, and she said, well, this is it. This is the place that I ran into him. And then Brock's like, well, maybe he lives somewhere nearby. And Misty's just like, I cannot believe he has my Pokemon. He has Starmie, Staryu, Godine. Let me see. Hold on. I want to get all the Pokemon that she has inside of her backpack. She says Staryu, Starmie, Godine, and Horsey. And Ash is like, well, Misty, you forgot your Psyduck. And good old asshole Misty is like, oh, I wish I could forget good old Psyduck. And then out of the bushes comes Psyduck. And she just turns around. She's as happy as a pig in shit to see this Pokemon. She runs over, gives him the hug. This is probably the most love that Psyduck has seen from Misty in ever. And she's just wondering, where did he come from? And so Blaines, when you hear her berate, basically talking all this shit about Psyduck, and then out comes Psyduck, and she's all giving it a hug and kisses and just loving this Pokemon. What was going through your mind when this scene was going on?
Misty is a tsundere, this word. Someone who loves to pretend to hate, I guess. And Psyduck is, of course, quite annoying. I can imagine it. But, I mean, just like Pokemon and Trainer, feels like they're your pet. You can't help but love a dumb dog, even if it's dumb anyway, But, this whole forest just seems to be swelling with delicious ducks. It doesn't only have to be Farfetch'd. We can also have Psyduck.
True. So, oh, why aren't Psyducks more extinct? Because they have stupid meat. All right. So as she picks up Psyduck, she's asking him, so where's my backpack? And Psyduck's like, Psyduck. Well, what about the other Pokemon? Psyduck. Do you know where anybody is or where all the other Pokemon are? Psyduck. And then Psyduck basically kind of jumps out of her arms and starts walking in a direction. And the trio and the trio and Officer Jenny just start following good old Psyduck. Well, right before that happens, because Misty starts getting all pissed off because all Psyduck is saying is Psyduck, which is what it's supposed to say, but she calls it a dumbo duck, and to start thinking straight. And then that's where Psyduck starts walking off into the direction of where Keith's camp is. Doug?
Yeah, so they're following Psyduck because in spite of himself, he does have some information that he just can't access at the moment. And they come to a fork in the road, which is probably the most cliche thing I've ever, well, not ever, but it's pretty much smacks you right in the face. And okay, which way did he go? And, poor Psyduck is stuck, and he, Misty is at her wit's end as it is. So she picks him up and starts shaking him, poor duck. And Brock goes, Misty, you need to calm down. And then that's when Psyduck, out of duress, just points forward.
No, it's not right or left. It's forward. And Misty's like, she's like, are you sure about this? And he's like, Psy-yi. And she's like, you better be. And it's like, following directions from a Psyduck does not sound like a good idea, but all right. And then we go back to the scene where Keith is. And Keith is basically, he has his own 2 little handbags. And it looks like he keeps his tent on his back, in his backpack. So he has 2 little, what look like little like bags or purses or whatever they are. And that has all the Pokemon that he has ever stolen. So as you alluded to, Blaines, it doesn't look like he's been doing this for too long, because he can still hold all the Pokeballs in 2 hands in 2 kind of small bags.
Yeah, but imagine all that weight, though. The 10 to 2 full bags of Pokeballs as well. This guy's got to be pretty strong.
Yeah, he is. And of course, as this is happening, Team Rocket finds Keith. They lower their balloon down over to him, and Keith is like, well, what are you doing here? And Team Rocket's like, you thought you were going to get away with it, didn't you? You thought you were just going to come and take our Pokemon and just run away and make fools of us, Meowth says. He's like, hey, come on, can't you guys take a joke? I meant what I said. I don't want to be a Pokemon trainer. I'm sick of raising so many Pokemon. So how about this? How about I'll give you back Arbok, Weezing, and Lickitung, and we'll call it even. And freaking Jesse and James are like, no, we don't want just our Pokemon back. What else can you do for us? And Keith's like, okay, well, if you don't just want your Pokemon, take all the Pokemon that I have. So this is another question that I end up having in probably about the next like 3 or 4 minutes into this episode. So these bags that he's about to hand over to Team Rocket end up being something else. And we're not going to spoil it yet. You'll find out in about 3 or 4 minutes. But he hands them these bags full of what we assume are Pokeballs. And Team Rocket is basically watering at the mouth and going, well, this kid's stupid. And they go and they take all of these. And
did they not learn from 10 minutes ago?
Apparently not.
You never learn.
Exact same scenario, basically.
It's the exact again, thank you, Doug. The exact same thing. This happened 8 minutes ago in this episode. He said he's going to give you all these Pokemon and just okay. Well, let's just continue. So Keith hands them over what we assume are all these Pokeballs. And Team Rocket takes it, and they basically take off with it. So Team Rocket goes, and they get into their balloon, And they're like, oh, we're so lucky. This wasn't as bad. This kid wasn't that bad after all. But let's point out one thing. This time, he didn't give up his Farfetch'd. So Farfetch'd is still on the floor with him. And Doug, this is where we see Psyduck point to Keith and Farfetch'd in the forest.
Yeah. So Psyduck was able to lead them back to Keith. Officer Jenny confronts him. They give Psyduck a extremely backhanded compliment. Keith and Farfetch'd are willing to walk off, and they're walled in by Brock and then Misty and Officer Jenny and Ash, and they're surrounded. And this is when Ash gets on his soapbox, which I never really enjoy, because it's very much, in terms of Ash, it's very much calling the kettle black in some instances.
Yeah, people train all these Pokemon. They work hard to get all these Pokemon, and you should love your Pokemon, as we hear in almost every other episode of Pokemon. But how's your Charizard treating you, Ash?
Yeah, really. No kidding.
So
it's game mechanic, the Charizard not obeying trainers that are not don't have enough gym badges, I guess. Yes. Something like that.
So, I want to get your thoughts on this real quick. So I had someone on Reddit point out a plot twist into the whole Pokemon anime, Blaines. So at one point in the anime, Ash has all of his gym badges, okay? He gets to the Pokemon League, and he calls out Charizard to do a match for him, and Charizard still won't obey him. How bad of a trainer do you have to be to have all the gym badges and your Pokemon still don't obey you?
Yeah, I guess unlike the games where it's just mechanics, I guess this tries to add more of a realistic element to your relationships with the Pokemon. So I suppose your bond is going to be different. I guess he always had a rough start with the Charizard. The Charizard's personality is supposed to come through really strongly, that it needs someone impressive, and Ash isn't that impressive to him.
No, not at all. So, all right. So it's at this point, Officer Jenny says that Keith is now under arrest for grand theft Pokemon. But Officer Jenny actually wants to have a little fun with Keith, because Ash went on his soapbox, as you said, Doug, and was talking about training Pokemon. So Ash is like, well, why don't we show you what Pokemon are good for? And he's like, let's battle. And Officer Jenny's like, okay, go ahead, battle him. Show him what these Pokemon can do, because Keith is sitting there saying that his Farfetch'd is so weak that he cannot battle. But Farfetch'd is up for the challenge at this point. And this is when we get the battle between Bulbasaur and Farfetch'd. So, Doug, you wanna go through this part? Or actually, I didn't even ask. Blaine, do you have this on in your background as well?
I do. Yeah.
You do?
I do. Yeah.
So would you want to go through the battle scene right here with Bulbasaur and Farfetch'd?
Sure, I'll try it out. Give it credit though, you can see Jenny obviously being outraged and trying to stop thievery, but we're all for and supporting humans pitting animals against each other in a fight to what we can presume near death, in some cases death. So, I mean, it's a different world. It has different laws, but we have the cop here overwatching this. Ash deploys his Bulbasaur, right? You naturally expect, because Ash is a veteran trainer and Keith doesn't appear to be a trainer, that Bulbasaur is probably going to win, right? Well, we have to have a look. So Keith doesn't have any faith in his Farfetch'd. Farfetch'd doesn't really take orders, or he's not giving commands to Farfetch'd. Farfetch'd is just doing his own thing. And he does take a lashing from Bulbasaur's Vine Whip at first and appears quite injured. but he managed to fend it off. He gets burning fire in his eyes and starts using his ability Agility, which Keith didn't even know he had. And that obviously outpaces Bulbasaur. So impressively, you know, Farfetch'd does manage to come out on top. He's stabbing him with his leak as much as possible. I don't know what attack that would be if you read it in the games. However, he does deal a finishing blow to Bulbasaur, knocking him out and having a little victory dance in the end. Now, he did this without a trainer. So it does look like his strength has come a long way, as well as his independence. But another point to point out is that he didn't need a trainer to do this, so he could very well still be a wild Pokemon, just a very much more leveled up one. So all Ash is left to do is tend to his Bulbasaur in the end, and his ego after that.
Oh, thank you.
Well, there's the adage that, you know, a person can be book smart or street smart, and I suppose in this instance it could apply to a Pokemon, because while Keith might not be a trainer in so much that the man doesn't even have a Pokeball for his primary Pokemon, even, you know, if we are even referring to them in that aspect. Because I'm still leaning more towards partners in crime versus trainer and Pokemon. But that's neither here nor there. You know, Farfetch'd is going to gain experience, you know, in just pulling off these schemes.
Yes.
You know, obviously, you know, we've established that he's picked up enough to do the whole baton routine that we saw at the beginning of the episode with Misty. And, you know, we see that he can use his leak in a number of different ways, you know, as a scoop and, you know, whacked me out with it. You know, we just saw that he dealt the finishing blow to Bulbasaur. Might not be conventional experience, you know, a la official, like, battles in the wild or, you know, let alone a gym battle here or there. He's picking up some type of experience.
Yes. And
you know, just imagine where he would be if he was actually properly trained.
oh, he'd be probably just as far as Ash and Pikachu are at this point. So it's at this point, Misty says she wants to go and give it a go. And she's like, I'm going to use Staryu. And she's like, oh, I forgot I don't have my Pokemon back yet. And then out walks Psyduck. Psyduck's basically saying that he wants to battle. And Farfetch'd puts up a hearty laugh, and he walks over to Psyduck and with its leak just starts pounding it in the head. Just pound, 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 pound. And Misty starts cheering for Farfetch'd, and she's like, yeah, keep hitting him, Farfetch'd. Keep hitting him. Keep hitting him. Because we all know that when Psyduck gets a headache, it starts to use its psychic attacks. And it's at this point that Psyduck starts to get a headache, starts using its psychic attack, and what was this attack called? It was called Migraine. Let me see.
Yeah. Let's see.
Psyduck's absolute migraine attack, which I've never seen in the Pokemon game. So this is just, I would just call this a psychic attack. That's just a straight up just psychic. And she goes and picks up Farfetch'd and throws Farfetch'd into Keith. Keith and Farfetch'd go flying up into the closest tree that's near them, and they fall out of the tree. Keith falls on his butt. Farfetch'd falls head first into Keith's head, and they are defeated. And Psyduck gets his glowing moment. And then it's at this point, Team Rocket is in their balloon, and they're about to whip open all of these Pokeballs. Come to find out that they are all Voltorbs. And all the Voltorbs are now getting ready to explode from the inside of the balloon. So Team Rocket just starts throwing all of the Voltorbs out, and they start exploding around Ash, Misty, Brock, Keith, and Officer Jenny. And Keith at this point is basically saying, I'm done with all my crimes, I'm so sorry, blah 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 blah. So Doug, you want to take it from this part?
The man has seen the light. You know, he might have been under duress when it happened, but he's seen the light. He wants to go on the straight and narrow. He wants to be a real boy. But yeah, and then, you know, we get the stereotypical Ash meets somebody, we get the goodbye. But this is a little different because Keith has had to return, you know, what he's stolen. We see that Misty's got her proper backpack back. We can assume that the Pokemon that are in the bags are going to get returned to whoever they belong to. You know, Keith and Farfetch'd are going to go, you know, through the proper channel. You know, Farfetch'd is still out of a bag, for goodness sake, or still out of has no
Pokemon.
This is going to sound weird. Has no ball. But
female.
Well, but so
it might be a female. We don't know. No one's ever said.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, that's true too. You know, we shouldn't go assuming things.
Male, female, it tastes all the same.
It's all duck.
It's all duck, man.
So, but yeah, it's at this point. Officer Jenny actually says that nobody is pressing charges against him because he returned everybody's Pokemon, which I think is a bunch of bullshit. Because there would have at least been one person saying, I want this guy in jail. But
I think it's worth noticing that she did say that all the victims have their Pokemon back. Who are all the victims? Just everyone we saw in the episode, or were there any more before this, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't really find that out, do we?
No.
Oh.
So, I mean, apparently we fast forwarded like 14, 15 hours after he's given back all the Pokemon. And unless here, I'll throw this in and this will help me sleep at night. Maybe Officer Jenny took all the Pokemon. They're sitting inside of her office right now. She caught all the trainers already, and all the trainers are getting ready to come back and pick up their Pokemon. And as long as they get their Pokemon back, everyone is happy.
And we all just agree to move on.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, this is, well, by the looks of it, that's her office. This is like small town, you know, or small town law, you know. They don't want to really keep prisoners stacked up inside or whatever, you know. You want to be able to have lower tier crimes just walk if it can be resolved. Else how?
So from this point, we get the whole goodbye scenario, and it's pretty funny because normally it's normally it's Ash, Misty, and Brock that are doing the whole goodbye scene, but in this part, we actually get Keith and Farfetch'd walking away into the sunset. I think this is the first time in a long time that this is the first time in a long time that Ash, Misty, and Brock aren't the ones walking away and doing their good old farewell goodbye like we get in most episodes. And you think the episode is over, and then we're back to Team Rocket. And this is kind of a funny scene. So they're having a heart conversation inside. They're like, this boy has gotten us twice. What are we going to tell the boss? How are we ever even going to even mention any of this to him? And James is, Meowth is kind of like, he's like, well, if we tell the boss this, the boss might want to hire this guy and we might be out of a job. So they all agree to not say anything to Giovanni going forward. And then for some odd reason in this little square basket, they missed a Voltorb.
Oh yeah, well of course they did. You know, we've established multiple times throughout this episode, Team Rocket's not too bright.
No. Fucking big ass Voltorb. How the hell do you miss a Okay. But
he was hiding he was hiding in the corner.
Apparently. So Voltorb at this moment, we get the good old kaboom, and Team Rocket goes blasting off again. And they actually get blasted out of their balloon. Their balloon is continuing its journey as Team Rocket goes plummeting to the ground. And that is the end of the episode. Blaines, how did you enjoy this episode?
I enjoyed. I mean, I think the early Pokemon episodes were really, really good. I stopped watching maybe, I don't even know when it was, maybe, how would I put it, 3 seasons or 4 seasons later. But it's classic. It brings back a lot of nostalgia and memories. And one thing I noticed with that Voltorb blowing up and Team Rocket going blasting off, they didn't go blasting off into the sky like they usually do. They blasted out off into the trees, just pop out. And I don't think that's very common, if I remember.
It's not. They normally go blast. I would have even liked the fact that the whole balloon just blew up and it popped a hole and then the balloon just went flying away. But no, Team Rocket just went plummeting. It's kind of a lackluster ending to Team Rocket at the ending of an episode.
Oh, you gotta change things up every once in a while.
That's true.
True. They don't do that very often. But yeah, I wonder what was the difference, I suppose, behind the scenes between this episode and their usual decision making. But either way, maybe it gives the effect that the balloon is still continuing the journey, like you said. They're just even in more trouble, more problems.
So, all right. Well, but yeah, that was the end of the episode. I can go ahead and turn this episode off now. So what we like to do now, this is fairly new to the podcast, Blaines. I'm going to ask Doug, and then I'm going to ask you on a scale from 1 to 5, how many stars would you give this episode of Pokemon that we just did? So Doug, how many stars would you give this episode on a scale from 1 to 4 on your Doug scale?
I lost a star. It was 1 to 5 seconds ago.
Oh, my bad. 1 to 5. My bad. I misspoke.
I don't know. Probably a solid 3. I mean, this was a fun episode. Farfetch'd, all things considered, is a pretty awesome Pokemon. The leak was a part of some good comedy. The back and forth between Keith and Farfetch'd was good. Psyduck got a moment to shine, but on the flip side of that coin, it's a very confusing episode. Because is Keith down on his luck? Has he been doing this for a while? Why aren't people more on edge about this guy if he's been doing this to enough people to have 2 bags full of Pokeballs that he doesn't own? We get the Farfetch'd Keith backstory for like a minute. Farfetch'd is presumably like somewhere within like level 20 or so, apparently, because he's just doing flips and dealing knockout blows. And so while it's a decent episode,
you have a lot of questions.
It's not really fleshed out. Yeah.
All right. That's fair enough. And Blaines, and I know you haven't watched Pokemon in a long time, but if you can remember some of the nostalgia of some of the older episodes that you have watched back then, what would you rate this compared to the other episodes that you are kind of familiar with, or that you can think back to and know a little bit more about those episodes?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the early episodes, but I'd also give this actually a 3. I was thinking if it's out of 5, I'd probably give it a 3 because of some of the things that we saw with Keith. You know, my feeling is he's not really a trainer, and I'm wondering, why does he want to steal those Pokemon anyway? Does he have the same kind of goals as Team Rocket, and what did Team Rocket do? I mean, you know, he's not going to sell them as far as we can pick up. Maybe he's eating them. I don't know, but he's not a trainer in my eyes. Either way, it was fun. I know the downside might have been that it's only in the forest. That's the whole setting of it, and it stays there for the whole episode. I like to see maybe a bit more variety, but on the upside, there is a lot of interesting interactions there. There's a lot of cute poses and moments for Pokemon to do their thing as well. And of course, Psyduck, being one of the underdogs, gets his moment as well, which is nice. He's the hero of the day, and Misty starts showing a bit of love towards him as well. So not too focused on Ash as well, you know, which is typical in most episodes. So we get a bit of change there, and we get to see the fabulous long-legged Officer Jenny.
Yes.
What a cherry on top.
Yes, the cherry on top. And I'm going to point out that this was the first episode that we saw Officer Jenny that Brock was not like going goo goo gaga over. Like he had no moment of that at all in this episode. So hats off to Brock. I don't think we'll be able to say that going forward, but hats off to him.
There's a lot of, you know, different tropes in this episode. Like you said, it's usually Ash and the gang walking away, but this is, you know, we got Keith and Farfetch'd walking in the sunset. You know, yeah, Brock wasn't horned up.
The Team Rocket blasting off thing as well, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, we got
a few changes.
You know, Ash loses a battle and not like,
and doesn't get down on his luck. Right,
he doesn't get pissed. He takes the loss. And
very weird episode.
Yeah, this is definitely outside of the status quo.
So, all right. Well, it's at this point, Blaines, that any guests that we have on the show, we like to give them the spotlight at the ending of the episode to plug their social media. Where can all of our fans find you on any type of social media going forward?
All right, my chance. So obviously my big one is YouTube, which is called Blaines, just Blaines, with an S at the end. It's the first one that will come up, so that's fortunate. For all the other social medias that I use, it's Real Blaines, no space. I got Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, kind of. I mean, I want to start using TikTok a bit more, and of course Discord. So that's all the big ones that I use. You can find me in Real Blaines on most of the... Oh, and Twitch, of course. I'm partnered on Twitch as well. Real Blaines over there as well. So whatever tickles your fancy.
All right. Awesome. So I'd like to thank you again for coming on the show this week, Blaines. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
That's fantastic.
And this is when we're going to start saying goodbye to our audience. So, Doug, go ahead and give your old goodbye, Doug.
Bye, Doug.
And this is Wrestling Chris G telling all of you that we have a nice little surprise next week with a brand new Pokemon. And it's in the title, so I can't really keep it a secret. It's next week's episode is Who Gets to Keep Togepi? Or translated from Japanese, Whose is Togepi? Yeah, I'll go with the American version. So that's next week's episode. That is episode 50 next week, everybody. So don't miss that episode, and we will see you on the other side. Have a good night, everybody.